so we have an article here and we are trying to comprehend it. It's an Aeon essay that we are trying to comprehend, and we are trying to break down all the sentences and try to understand the meaning of it. So we have a 10 paragraph passage, and the title is like Imagination is a Powerful Tool. Why is philosophy afraid of it? Let's start. Philosophers have a love-hate relationship with imagination. What do you mean by love-hate relationship? Love-hate relationship is like a relationship where it's not completely entirely filled with love. It's not entirely filled with hatred. It's kind of both the emotions, positive emotions and negative emotions exist simultaneously. There are areas where I like imagination. There are areas where I am not happy with imagination. So kind of there are mixed emotions for me with respect to imagination. There are areas where I really like imagination, and there are areas where I am kind of annoyed, I'm irritated, I'm not really liking imagination because of this. So both the emotions are kind of existing simultaneously. So philosophers, that's what they don't look at imagination as entirely positive. There are areas where they're looking at imagination as a fantastic positive thing. There are areas where they look at imagination as not so positive thing. So that is what is being said here. Rene Descartes, for example, disparaged it as more of a hindrance than a help in answering the most profound questions about the nature of existence. So, for example, this one particular philosopher, Rene Descartes, when he is answering questions about nature of existence, who we are, why we are existing, such profound questions, when I'm trying to answer such questions about our existence, this imagination he is telling is not a help, it is just a hindrance. So he is telling about imagination in a negative tone. Rene Descartes is looking at imagination when you are trying to answer questions about why we are existing, all those things, such profound questions. When I am trying to answer, imagination is not helping me, it is just a hindrance, is what he is trying to say. Trying to imagine one's way towards metaphysical truth, he wrote in this one particular book, is as foolish as falling asleep in the hope of obtaining a clearer picture of the world through dreams. Okay, metaphysical truth, as in what is metaphysics? Metaphysics is more like about who we are, why we are existing, what is this universe, who are humans, what is the purpose of us. So answering all such basic philosophical question is what we'll call as metaphysics. So when I'm trying to get an answer towards the nature of existence or metaphysical truth, I am thinking and trying to answer such very basic questions. When I am trying to do that, what if I go and say, okay, I'll do one thing in the to answer these questions, I'll do one thing, I'll better go and sleep, because if I sleep right now, in my dream I will get an answer to all these questions. If I tell this answer, how foolish is this? That is how foolish it is to pursue imagination. That's what Rene Descartes is telling. So basically, when I'm trying to answer such a profound question, can somebody go and tell, okay, I'll go and sleep, in my dreams I'll get an answer? How foolish is this? That is how foolish imagination is in helping us answer these questions. So these are negative ways in which Rene Descartes is speaking about imagination. Yet Descartes also relied heavily on imagination in scientific and mathematical essays such as so-and-so book, in which he tried to imagine the details of basic building blocks for structures such as humans, animals and machines. He was speaking about negative things of imagination, but again he himself in this one particular book, when he relied heavily on imagination in the scientific and mathematical essay. It's not even an arts thing, it's a scientific and mathematical essay. There he is relying heavily on imagination, and he is imagining about basic building blocks for structures such as humans, animals and machines, etc. So he is using imagination to his use. So he's speaking about imagination as a hindrance in the first paragraph, but the same Rene Descartes is actually using imagination in science and mathematics books and all. According to the philosopher Denis Sepper at the University of Dallas, Descartes relied upon a kind of a biplanar imagination pioneered by Plato, in which one level of reality could embody and display relations that existed on a different level and vice versa. So most likely what they are trying to say is there are two levels, two planes. In one plane that's a reality, and one plane there is an imagination So Rene Descartes is relied upon a kind of a biplanar imagination, which one level of reality. So this level is reality, another level is imagination, and they could embody and display relationship that existed on a different level. So there are relationship between these two levels. So this kind of a two-plane imagination is what Rene Descartes is showing, and that is said by some recent philosopher at University of Dallas. Okay. Scottish philosopher. So what is being displayed here is the same Rene Descartes, who is speaking about imagination in a negative term. He is also speaking about it in a positive way. Now similarly, the Scottish philosopher Davis Hume was equally conflicted about imagination, especially when compared with perception and memory. So when they say conflicted, they are saying about, okay, he's speaking about it in positive way, he's speaking about it in negative way. Both the emotions are existing. So for not just for Rene Descartes, even for the philosopher called Hume, imagination is both positive as well as negative. He's conflicted about it. He's having both positive opinion as well as negative opinion. Let's go ahead and see. When we remember about any past event, the idea of it flows in upon the mind in a forcible manner, he wrote in this particular book. But imagined images and sensations, he continued, are faint and languid and cannot without difficulty be preserved by mind steady and uniform for any considerable time. So what Hume is telling is, hey, whenever I'm thinking about some memory in the past, that memory will come to my mind as though it is saved in my memory, as though it is saved, immediately it will come to my mind. I don't have to force it. It will completely easily flow into my mind. Whenever I think about some memory of my past, it will immediately come. But imagined images or visualization or imagination, if I try, they are kind of just faint and languid, and I have to only if I try it very with difficulty, I will be able to preserve it in my mind steadily. Otherwise, it will not be saved in my mind steadily. So what he is trying to say is, it is not even compared to memory and perception. So memory and perception, it will easily flow into my mind. Whenever I think about something past, it will easily come to my mind. But if I'm thinking about imagination, right now I'm imagining, but it cannot be preserved for a longer period of time without difficulty. So only if I take so much difficulty, I will be able to preserve it. Otherwise, it's not easy to preserve imagination in my mind for a longer period of time. The imagined images will not stay in my mind, but my memory will stay in my mind. If I think of my childhood activities, I will be able to remember it. I can instantly, right now I can think of it, 10 years later I can think of it, it comes into my mind. But if there is some imagined version that I'm creating in my mind right now, I think unless I take efforts, it may not stay in my mind for a longer period of time, is what he's trying to say. So he's speaking about imagination with a constraint. However, Hume also claimed that humans are most free when they're engaging in imagination. So he's speaking about imagination in a positive way. Perception can only show us the actual, he said, but imagination can go beyond that to the realm of maybe, what if, and if only. So basically, perception or memory can only tell us what has happened in the past. But imagination can go and tell us, what if this has happened? Maybe, what if this happened? If only I ended up clearing this exam. If only I ended up getting the job. If only this happened. So such alternate possibilities and all imagination can do. So he is trying to say it in a positive way. Indeed, nothing we can imagine is absolutely impossible. Hume is even going to tell that whatever we imagine, it will definitely be possible one day. You cannot tell anything is impossible. Whatever you imagine, it is definitely possible one day or the other. Nothing is impossible. If you can imagine it, it is definitely possible. Nothing is impossible is what he is trying to say. So that much positively he is telling. So the same person Hume, so the entire passage is about like how the same person are looking at imagination in both negative lens as well as positive lens simultaneously. They gave first example of Rene Descartes. Now they are looking at Hume, who is looking at imagination in negative sense as well as also in a very positive sense. What's behind this apparent tension at the heart of imagination? Why are there two-pronged approach towards imagination? Hume put his finger on it when he talked about how our faculty for fantasy helps us to move beyond and change our present reality. Why is there an apparent tension at the heart of imagination? Why is there a tension or a conflict with respect to imagination? Hume is putting his finger on it. Hume is answering this question when he talked about how our faculty for fantasy, how our ability to fantasize helps us move beyond and change our present reality. So our ability to fantasize or our ability to imagine will help us change our reality. So imagination will help us change our reality is what he's trying to say. One need only think of, okay, one just have to think about how Leonardo da Vinci's fantastical flying machine paved way for Wright brothers. Wright brothers are the ones who invented aeroplanes. So what he's trying to say is Leonardo da Vinci, he created a fantastical flying machine. So he kind of imagined kind of a flying machine, and that gave way to Wright brothers in 1903 creating aeroplane. So that we don't have to think anywhere else. Just think in this one particular example. See how imagination gave way for a fantastic reality, a great reality, or how H.G. Wells' novel *The War of the Worlds* inspired the first liquid-fueled space rocket to see the truth of this insight. We don't have to think anywhere else. Just to think of these two examples. So the imaginations gave one gave rise to aeroplane, one gave rise to rockets. So all these things were first imagined by somebody, and then it became a reality. See, can you see how imagination can actually become a reality? That's what you don't have to see anywhere else. Just look at these two examples, you will get an understanding is what he's trying to say. So he's telling imagination in a positive way, but imagination is also restricted by the extent of our previous perception and experiences, Hume said. Imagination will alter our reality. Imaginations can alter our reality. That is one. Second thing is, imagination is also constrained by whatever reality is about. So whatever is your past history, past reality, based on that only you are also constrained by imagination. So it's kind of this is what the conflict is, or the tension is what Hume is telling. So imagination can modify the reality, but imagination is also constrained by reality. Whatever is your past history, based on that only you can imagine. So Hume is telling, let us chase our imagination to our heavens, or to our utmost limits of our universe. So what he's trying to say is like, imagination can take us to the heavens in an unrestrained way, or to the utmost limits of the universe. To the utmost, we never really advance a step beyond ourselves. So basically, you can go to the limits of the universe. Whatever universe limits is there, only until that you can go. You can keep going to heaven, or you can go only until the limits of the universe. We never really advance a step beyond ourselves. So basically, what he's trying to say is, imagination can give you, it can push you to the limits of the universe. Whatever is possible, you can keep doing. Either that, I mean, in one angle, imagination can alter your reality. In other angle, imagination can only be impacted by what a reality is. We never really advance a step beyond ourselves. So whatever is based on our past only we imagine. No, so it is in a way constrained. In a way it is a possibility. In a way it is a constraint also. So this is what Mr. Hume is telling. One way to resolve such ambivalence is like two things are simultaneously existing. One way to resolve such ambivalence would be to divide the imagination into different kinds. So the author is telling, okay, let's do one thing. Let's divide imagination into two different types. Along these lines, towards the end of 18th century, Immanuel Kant distinguished two forms of imagination. So he's one Mr. Kant. He's telling there are two types of imagination. One is called a productive imagination. One is called a reproductive imagination. Most likely we'll be able to guess the meaning of it. Productive is like creating, or reproductive is more like recreating. Kind of. Productive faculty is what helps to synthesize and transform sensory content into a meaningful whole. So when I'm able to, sensory content as in when I'm seeing, when I'm looking at it, when I'm hearing it, when I'm feeling a touch and all those things, I will be able to imagine something, right? So that is what is a productive faculty. So the identification of something, let's say I'm a blind person, right? Somebody is coming and telling, okay, identification of something with pointy ears. Oh, there is something, there is an animal which has a pointy ears and it has furs, and that animal can meow, and that animal will rub against your leg. So when somebody is coming and telling me all these things, whatever I'm imagining is brought together by a productive imagination into a form of a cat. So anybody in the world to whom you go and tell this particular these four features, they will be creating in their mind a particular kind of an imagination. That is what you will call as a cat. So it's kind of a productive imagination. This unifying tendency is implanted in every human mind irrespective of experience. So whether you have a past experience, whether you don't have a past experience, when I tell these features, these features will point to something called cat. So for Kant, the productive imagination is what makes perception possible. So this is more like, based on facts or based on the given data points, this is the only kind of production or creation that is possible. So basically you are telling the features, there's a pointy ears, a fur is there, meows, it'll meow, it'll make a sound called meow, and it'll rub against your leg. So everybody will be imagining a same or similar kind of an visualization, and that is what you will perceive this image as cat. So this is like a creation. I am creating a new image in my mind. This is one thing. By contrast, the reproductive imagination is largely about recollection. So this is creating for the first time. This is more like retrieving from your past memory. When a story comes on the radio about a long lost cat who found its way on its who has found its way home, you draw from the many cats you've seen before to picture the heartwarming scene. So here I just told cat is trying to find its way back to home. I am not even describing the features of cat. This is how it is physically. It is appearing like this. I'm not creating an image in your mind. I'm just telling there's a cat which came back to home. So the moment I tell this, you are able to create a picture of cat in your mind from your memory. You will think of all the past cats that you have seen in your life, and based on that you will visualize some cat. So this is what you are recollecting from your memory or retrieving. So this would be a reproductive imagination at work, because the reproductive faculty works only with materials previously provided to someone in someone's senses. It is subject to the kind of limits Hume discussed. So if, for example, you are a person who has only seen black color cats in your mind, and when you are imagining this, your mind will think of a black color cat, whereas there is some other person who has only seen white color cat. So in his imagination he will think only about a white color cat, because in his history he has only seen white color cat. So similarly, whatever kind of cat I've seen in my past, based on that only my perception or my imagination will be there. So that is what is being said as, one is a creative imagination, one is a recreating imagination, one is a productive imagination, one is a reproductive imagination. This is, everybody will be arriving at this image based on the description provided. Here, depending upon your past experience, you will imagine in a different way. So this is what Hume is telling. There are two kinds of imagination you need to understand. One is a productive imagination, one is a reproductive imagination. Kant's bifurcation hints at why philosophers treat imagination with both despair and delight. Why are they looking at imagination at both negative as well as positive? Because there are two types of imagination. Perhaps a kind of imagination we despise, we hate. Despise na hate. Perhaps a kind of imagination we hate is totally different from its more useful cousin. Maybe one kind of imagination you are hating it, another kind of imagination you are finding it useful. That is why the same imagination you are ending up liking, at the same time you are hating. But in accepting the subdivision, we give up on the possibility of seeing imagination unified mental faculty, which is perhaps how we experience it. So what the author is trying to say is, imagination is a whole, the entire single entity. But by going through this theory, we will give upon the opinion that imagination is a single entity, and we are bifurcating it into two different types of entity. So if you go into this particular theory, you will look at imagination as two different entities and not as a single entity, and the author somehow feels that imagination is something as a single entity only, and that is how we experience. Therefore this theory is something the author is not inclined. There are two, you will bifurcate it, and then you will not look at it as a single entity. But I feel that as a single entity, and that is how we experience. So the author at this point of time is not inclined towards this bifurcation. Then what is the author going to say here? Let's see. When I think of all the wondrous things we can do with imagination, I am inclined towards a different way of unraveling its enigmatic duality. So I am not inclined towards this bifurcation or this separation or differentiation. Rather, I want to split into two different, some other type of splitting, and he's calling it as an enigmatic duality. Enigma is more like something that is unbreakable, something that is very puzzling, something that is very mysterious. I am not able to understand this, I am not able to break it, I am not able to, it is very mysterious, it is very secretive, it is very kind of puzzling. So such is what we'll call as an enigmatic. So author is calling it as an enigmatic duality, as in like, I'm trying to understand this, I'm not able to understand it fully. So that is what you will call as an enigmatic thing, an enigmatic duality. So it's kind of a mysterious duality. It has dual properties and it's kind of a mysterious. So I will try to, I'm inclined towards a different kind of showing that it has a different type of a duality. Author is trying to say there is a different kind of a duality. I'll show you come. Rather than splicing up the imagination into distinct kinds, don't split into two different types of imaginations. We'll not do that. Rather, we might think about its distinct uses. Let's look into how it may be used in two different ways. I'd like to call these as transcendent imagination and instructive uses. Okay, transcendent function and instructive function. This is kind of two different use cases. One uses transcendent, one uses instructive. These are the two different functions of imagination or uses of imagination. On the one hand, when we pretend or fantasize or escape into an engrossing work of literary fiction, imagination can take us beyond the here and now. Okay. On the other hand, when we imagine in an attempt to make sense of what other people are thinking, or to problem solve, or to make decisions, our speculations are used to help us understand the here and now. Okay, so basically what he's trying to say is there are two purposes of imagination. One purpose is, okay, you are in this world and you want to escape the reality and enter into a different world. Maybe you are reading a fiction, maybe you are going to watch a movie, maybe you are into an art, maybe you are imagining some random things. So there, what is happening is you are forgetting your reality and you are entering into a different world. Most likely watching a very, very immersive movie, which is completely set in a different time period, or a fictional movie kind of thing. So you forget your world and then you enter into a different world. So imagination is helping you into a different world. This is what is called as transcendent. It transcends you from this world into a different world. So you forget about the current world here and you move into a different world. So this is one use. We move into a world of fantasy. We try to see what is happening in that world. For example, when I'm reading a book like Harry Potter, I forget about my world, my reality, and I move into the world of Hogwarts, and I kind of enter into that world and I'm being there. So this is what you will call as a transcendent use. Whereas the other one, I can use imagination to try to solve my day-to-day problems. So let's say I'm trying to solve a particular problem, and because I'm imagining, I am able to solve, using my imagination, I am able to solve the actual day-to-day problem that I have. So it is helping me about the things in my real world. So there are two uses. One is it helping me to escape my reality world into some fictional world, fantasy world. That is one use of it. Another world is this is actually trying to help me solve the issues in my own world. Whereas our transcend uses of the imagination tends towards whimsy and fancies, our instructive functions point towards a practical, and it is very concrete. So these are two different uses, is what the author is trying to say. In both these modes, the secret to success seems to lie in the application of kind of imaginative constraint. Whether it is in this use or in this use, for it to be successful, you need to see how to apply the imaginative constraint properly. Are you understanding how the constraint? See, in imagination, you cannot randomly imagine. There are constraints within which there are some boundaries within which you have to imagine all. Are you able to understand these boundaries and this constraint and boundaries? And if you correctly apply this boundaries properly, that is how the success is possible. So basically, only by understanding these constraints and boundaries, or by application of these constraints and boundaries, success is possible in both these uses, is what the author is saying. And how to use these constraint or boundaries, what is right for what is right for one use might not be fitting for other. So for example, the constraint being put in this particular use might not be same in this particular use, so it will be different, the different constraint for different places. Perhaps the reason why philosophers have been conflicted about imagination is that they haven't grasped how limitations need to be modified to the circumstances. So basically, why philosophers are having this conflict, oh, in some cases I'm liking it, in some cases I'm not liking it, because you are probably not able to understand how to use the constraints or limitations or boundaries to imagination in different cases. In one cases, this is how I can imagine, I cannot go beyond this. In one case, there is no constraint, I can keep imagining whatever I want to imagine. So that difference in constraint you are not able to understand, and that is why probably you are loving the imagination, at the same time you are hating it also. The conflict is because you are not able to understand the constraints are different in different scenarios. When we are writing fiction or playing games of pretend, when you are writing fictions or okay, now let's pretend I am the chief minister, now let's pretend I am the prime minister. When you are doing that pretentious games, or when you are writing fiction or making art, arguably we do our best imagining by setting the boundaries widely or removing the shackles entirely. So basically, when I am entering into art or fiction or writing a storytelling or such things, generally we don't set constraints very strictly. We will set the constraints very open, or we don't even set a constraints. When I'm imagining a story, why do I even have to set a constraint? There is no constraint for imagination. I can imagine whatever it is possible. So that is what the author is telling. In one area there is no constraint, I can imagine whatever I want to. However, in contrast, when we employ imagination in the context of scientific or technological discovery, when I'm using imagination for science or technological discovery, or any other real world problem solving, we must allow our imagination to be framed by the situation at hand. So when I'm trying to solve a particular scientific problem, some physics equation I'm trying to solve, or I'm trying to find a solution to a mathematical problem, here I cannot go out and without any constraint randomly I can imagine. No, it is not possible. There are some rules within which I have to imagine. So here there are constraints. In certain places there are no constraints, here there are constraints. Once you understand that the constraints are different in different kinds of imagination, this kind of conflict and all will not be there. That's what the author is trying to say. Figuring out where to draw these lines is not easy. It can be extraordinarily tricky to know which factors should stay in play and which should be eliminated. So figuring out where to draw these lines, now how to put a boundary on, oh, this is the limit for imagination. For this kind of imagination, the limit is bigger. For this kind of imagination, the limit is smaller. How to draw this line? It's not very easy, and it's very tricky to understand what factor should I consider, what factor I should not consider, etc. But looking at how such constraints operate, not only can we see our way towards imaginative greatness, perhaps we can also purge philosophy of its anxiety about the idea. By understanding this constraint, once we understand the constraint, once we understand the boundary or limitation, other things, it is not just we can do great level of imagination. It's not just that, we can also remove from philosophy the anxiety about imagination. So there is this conflict about imagination, no, there is this love-hate relationship with respect to imagination, no. So in one area they are liking it, in one area they are not liking it. So this love-hate relationship will completely purge, and we will make philosophy start completely liking imagination. So it will purely be a love relationship with respect to imagination, not a love-hatred relationship. So for that to do, we need to understand how the constraint operates, is what the author is trying to say. After all, as Hume observed, humans are mightily governed by imagination. So we are very heavily governed by imagination. So we cannot do away without imagination. Without imagination, we cannot function. So we need imagination. So we cannot have a love-hate relationship. We need to have a love relationship with imagination. And how can we do it? By understanding the constraints better, where we can imagine, where we cannot imagine, what is the limit, what is not the limit. So once we understand the boundary, when we can imagine, when we cannot cross a boundary, once we understand that, all these love-hate relationship will be gone, and will purely be the philosophers and others will only have a love relationship with imagination. This is a fantastic passage. I hope you enjoyed comprehending the passage with me. Thank you, students. Thank you.